My background is originally from Pennsylvania and background in biology, lifelong passion for natural history, be it birds, be it reptiles, be it archaeology, be it geology, be it botany, what have you. And my passions brought me to Central America many, many years ago. And to make a long story short, I got to the point where I thought, I think it would be good if uh, that feeling you get when you go home from vacation and you're kind of going through this sort of withdrawal period. I didn't want to have that anymore. Uh, so I decided to move to where I had to a place I had become very, very enamored with, and that was Honduras. And why did I become so enamored with Honduras? 100 protected areas, lowland rainforests, cloud forests, Mayan ruins, not to mention coral reefs right there. The healthiest part of the Mesoamerican barrier reef system is right here. 750 plus species of birds, a couple of hundred species of mammals. I'm not even sure what the reptile list is, but the flora and the fauna were a big draw for me with, my background being in biology and natural history. And not to mention the people. Honduras is definitely a different culture. You do not come here thinking that it is the same culture as the United States or Canada. It's not. It's very different. But it's a pretty easy culture to navigate. It's a very, very kind culture, very warm people, genuine people, and something that makes life very, very easy here. I stopped managing in at Pico Bonito Lodge, I think it was 2018. And not long after, decided, well, I've been working for someone else for so long. I think it's time for me to do what I always really wanted to do, and that was start my own ecotourism company. And so I did, and that is Natural Selections Tours. And I run it living here in Honduras. Yes, we do birding tours and natural history tours in and around Honduras, but we also go to other places in Central America and South America and North America and Africa and Asia, just to name a few broad regions. And I'm working with Ryan and with James here because we're developing birding at their lodge, Las Cascadas. It's an incredible place. It's an incredible location, and they are smack dab between two big national parks, Pico Bonito National Park and Nombre de Dios National Park, which means that they are within striking range of 500 plus species of birds, which is something like 2/3 of the species that exist in all of Honduras. So that's some real general background on me. I would say not all, but the vast majority of my clients are 50, 55 plus. Probably 70% are women. And to answer your question, Ryan, yes, we do find, I mean, there are a lot of great places to live. Sooner or later, you just have to, throw a dart and pick. But Honduras has, when we offer our birding itineraries in Honduras, they're just easy. Yeah, it's mountainous. I mean, there are a lot of vertical mountains in here. Pico Bonito National Park is right there. It goes from, sea level to 9,000 feet within a, couple of horizontal miles. But we don't take people to the top of those mountains to bird. We take people to the foothills. We take people to the lowlands. And in the other places we go throughout the country, there are some steep trails and things like that we go on. But for the most part, it's easy to moderate birding. If you are an adventurous person and you really want to go and hike up to cloud forest, you can do it. But to see, 2, 3, 400 species of birds and within, a week, maybe 10 days is very, very easy without having to exert yourself very, very much. Most of the places we go are just a couple of hours drive time in between. If people come to Las Cascadas and stay and they're bird watching, whether they're serious bird watchers or even just want to dip their toe in the water, they can do 2 or 3 days right there at Las Cascadas without even having to go anywhere. And if they're more serious into bird watchers, if they have a list, if they showed up with a $1,000 pair of binoculars, or they have a field guide and a couple of friends with them, and they want to see a lot more of Honduras. We do it. We can do easily five days, I would say, at least, based out of Las Cascadas, probably six. From there, we can see lowland rainforest, middle elevation rainforest. We can see mangrove wetlands. We can see grasslands. We can see Caribbean shoreline habitat. And then from there, if we want to see more, it's just a couple of hour drive. What is it? West, and then a little bit south to another lodge called Panacam Lodge, where we have really good access to pine oak forest and lakeshore habitats around Lake Yohoa. And then without too much work, driving right straight up to it, really nice high elevation cloud forest. Excuse me, where we get I don't know if you all know what a quetzal is, but we get resplendent quetzals very, very easily there. I think it's national bird of Guatemala, if I'm not mistaken. And coincidentally, much easier to see here in Honduras than they are in Guatemala. First and foremost, I mean, we know birding is a huge industry, right? That seems to be the focus of what we're talking about here. When I started to market birding to North Americans and Europeans, way back 20 years ago, at that time, in North America, in the United States alone, not just I'm going to omit Canada for a moment. In the United States alone, it was a $6 billion a year industry. And everywhere I looked, I was getting that number. And I think it was second only to golf. It's probably a lot more than that now. There are birders of all level. There are the folks that just like to sit at home and watch the little tweeties outside the window at their bird feeder. And there are folks with a list that goes to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,000, 10,000 species that they feel they must get. First and foremost, whether you're looking at the birds outside your window or you're one of these manic list keepers, it's got to be fun. And we want it to be fun. We don't want it to be a job. We don't want it to be an industry. Scuba diving, for example, it's a lot of fun, right? But it's so gear intensive. You've got to have this and you've got to have that, and you've got to do it by this clock and that depth and this and that and the other thing. Birding's not like that. Birding is just relax. Let's get ourselves in nature. Let's immerse ourselves in nature, and let's just let a guide help us enjoy all this stuff that we might not ordinarily notice. So to start out, if you're, if Tom, I don't know if you're a birder, Colleen seems to have disappeared, but whoever you may be, come on down, bring a pair of binoculars. They don't have to be expensive binoculars. If you want to buy a field guide, bring a field guide. The guides that we use in Honduras, and not to mention everywhere, are fantastic. They're experts. I mean, and they're not just experts in, that's a lovely cotinga, that's a keel-billed toucan, that's an emerald toucanet. That's important, absolutely. They've got to be able to identify the birds by sight and by sound, because a lot of times you don't see it, you hear it, and by following the sound, that way you get to see the bird. But not just that, they're fantastic with their people skills, and Hondurans in particular. I'm thinking of all the other countries that we go, and boy, it's a lot of countries, 30, 40 at least. Hondurans tend to be the most patient. I'm sure there are exceptions, that's a pretty broad brush, and I'm generalizing, but in terms of guiding and people skills, being able to identify the birds, being able to accommodate a group of 8 or 10 different people, everybody in the group has a different personality. These guys know how to sort that out and make everybody happy very, very, very fast. So they facilitate the experience. They facilitate your introduction to birding, whether it's your introduction to birding or you need to get the your 9,999th bird. They can help you do that. Generally speaking, when in terms of gear, setup, gearing up, we know how to answer that question depending on the client. We get an email from a client, we get a phone call from a client, what have you. if they start out, hey, we'd like to come to Honduras and we'd like to do a couple of days snorkeling here and a couple of days birding there, and then we'd like to go to the Mayan ruins. We kind of know what we're dealing with, and we know how to cater to that kind of client, and they don't need that much gear. If we get you know Raul and his friend Ashok, and Ashok has just got his 10,000th bird, and he's coming to Honduras because he's got to get a lovely cotinga, and he's been to Costa Rica and he's been elsewhere and hasn't gotten it. Now we know that's a whole different ball game. We probably don't even need to talk to them about gear because they've already been all around the world anyhow. But whatever your level, we're here to help, and we do that well. Why are we coming to Honduras? If we're a diehard birder, if we're XYZ company and they've put together a group of 8 people and they're going to come to Honduras on a program birding itinerary, and they're going to use my company, Natural Selection Stores here in Honduras. Every single person in that group is going to have a list of targets they want to see. Before they get here, they're going to do their research and they're going to see, okay, Honduras has this, that, and the other thing. Honduras, let me just give you a little bit of background. Honduras as a birding destination is sort of in the middle of Central America. I'm going to assume everybody here knows what the map of Central America looks like. We're kind of not really halfway through Central America, but that Central American isthmus, if you want to use the bottom part of Mexico and the Yucatan, we're about halfway down. So we're at this sort of nexus of the southern extreme of a lot of northern and Mexican tropical species ranges, and we're at the northern extreme of a lot of South American and tropical bird species ranges. So it puts us in a sort of a unique geographic location. And that, to get to your question, is a big reason why a lot of experienced birders come here. I think Honduras has something like 70 or 72 what are called regional endemics. Okay, I'm assuming we all know what an endemic species is. That's a species that only lives in one particular place, and one particular country. Let's put it that way. Using man-made boundaries. Honduras has these regional endemics where they exist in maybe a little bit over the border in Guatemala, or maybe they exist a little bit down south into Nicaragua, but for the most part, the bulk or the thickest part of their densest part of their home range is right here in Honduras. And those are species that people are going to want to come here for and hope to see. Lovely cotinga, I don't think it's a regional endemic, but it's a very easy bird to see in Honduras. It's this, glittering blue, iridescent blue and purple thing about the size of a robin. You can see him in Mexico. You can see him in Costa Rica, but they're going to be 100 miles away at the top of a tree. If you come to Honduras and you go to the right place at the right time, you're going to see 15 of them in the same tree at the same time, about eye level. That's more of a target bird than a regional endemic. Regional endemics are going to be something like, blue-throated motmots, black-throated jay, bushy-crested jay, singing quail, green-breasted mountain gem hummingbird, just to name a few. Those regional endemics are a bit spread around the country, but there are a handful that are very, very gettable here on the North Coast where I am. If we were going to do a tour that included a lot of regional endemics for birders, for experienced birders, we would come and stay at Las Cascadas, 5-6 days, something like that. Then move another 3-4 days towards Panacam, and then another 3-4 days further down into the highlands. And we could probably get folks 40 or so of these regional endemics. I know I'm speaking of, but it's a little bit of an advanced sort of topic for birders, but some of the tropical wow birds, as I like to call them, that if you're not a targeted bird or you're not some experienced avid tourist, you just love to see. Keel-billed toucans all over the place. Collared arasaris, which are a type of toucan, all over the place. If you go to Copan, starlet macaws, guaranteed all over the place and in your face. Oh my goodness, what else do we have here? Squirrel cuckoos, easy to see. Different kinds of manakins, which are these little, birds that snap and are very colorful and beautiful and live in the understory of the forest. Very, very common to see. Did I mention motmots? Tom, do you know what a motmot is? You said no? Okay. Extremely beautiful, tall bird. I don't know how to describe it. Let's call it twice the size of an American robin, but with a very long sort of pendulum type of tail. And they sit very erect. They're very electric blue and green, and a lot of them even have little lines above their eyes. And they've got this tail that hangs. It's sort of clipped at the end. It's bare, and then it flares out again, sort of like a tennis racket.
Hmm.
And they sit and they swing this tail like a metronome.
Hmm.
And there are 7 species of motmots in Honduras.
Wow.
People love them. That's one of the big bombastic tropical wild birds everybody wants to see. Um, in fact, I recall last time I was at Cascadas, there were some folks there who were dying to see motmots, and I guess they eventually got them. Um, I don't recall what species, but Honduras is a place where you can see, 5, 6, 7 species of motmots. Um, so there's, everything for the beginner, all the great stuff, the tropical wild bird, the toucan, this, that, and the other thing. And you've got your regional endemics and all your little skulky species in the rainforest for the really advanced targeted lister type people. Honduras has an interesting dynamic. Okay, you mentioned before that it's mountainous, right? And I mentioned before that we don't go to the tops of those mountains to bird. We kind of stay in the foothills. Why can we do that? Because Honduras is one of those very few places that has what's called altitudinal or elevational migration of birds. Okay. So Honduras has seasons. The winter season tends to be, let's call it late November through the end of February. Okay. That's the cooler, quote unquote, season. That's the somewhat drizzly season if we happen to get a cold front. Okay. But that very mild coolness that might get a daytime high of 80 or something like that, or high 70s. But up high in the mountains, that's much cooler. And if we get a little bit of a drizzle up high in the mountains, that's rain. So what does that do? That takes these birds like cotingas and solitaires and things like that, and quetzals, that big, glamorous bird with the flowing green tail feathers, and they migrate down. They migrate down from those high elevations to get out of that inclement weather, but also to capitalize on fruiting and flowering tree species that are peaking during those winter months. So winter months are great months. If someone asks me, hey, when's the best time I can, for me to come to Honduras, outside of what I want to see, species wise, I'm going to tell them February, March, prime birding time. Second to that, let me back up. January, February, March, prime birding time. Second to that, November, December, April, May, June, July. Third, October, September, August, not the greatest. Kind of hot, kind of slow. Birds are molting their feathers, things like that at that time of year. So seasonality is important, and the best season is the best season for the reasons I just described. If we're talking about beginners, we used to do a thing. I'll give you a little anecdote. And I'm going to talk about the lodge I used to manage. We used to have an activity. We did daily activities. You can hike here, you can hike there, you can go snorkeling, you can go, mountain bike riding, you can go horseback riding, all those different things, whitewater rafting. And one of the things we offered was an early bird hike. Sounds kind of hokey, right? Early bird hike, $20. You get some muffins and some coffee, and you go out with the guide and walk around the very flattest part of the lodge, and or maybe it was $25 and come back. And that was what the very non-birders or very mildly interested guest would do. I would say without fail, 40 to 50% of the people that did that early bird hike wound up emailing me because they wanted to come back for more time, or some friend of theirs was going somewhere else on a birding tour, and they decided to go with them, and they wanted to say, hey man, that early bird hike was fantastic. That we had no idea, tropical birding, it sounds so cliche, but I mean it was just an unbelievable kaleidoscope of color and texture, and we saw so many other things in between the birds that we didn't expect, that we're hooked. So yeah, it's that's an anecdote of, the just to give you an idea of some of the the more basic level people, how much that something like dipping their toe in the water will really cause them to embrace birding, and not just birding, but nature as a whole. Um, you know, to appreciate nature and to appreciate it, however which way, whether it's through birding or digging, going through tide pools on the California coast or whatever it is. It all causes us, it causes us to really, really slow down and appreciate this world that we live in, and more importantly, the natural world that we live in. It causes us to somewhat not think so much about the human world and all its speed bumps and perils and things you have to navigate. Nature is something that's beautiful. It's wholesome. We understand it on a very, very instinctive level, probably because we are nature, although we don't want to admit it. But it's something that brings a lot of people solace, joy, calm, and enables them, causes them to see the world in a different way, perhaps that they didn't before they started birding.